So this presentation is about visualizing daily on-site space use, but before we go into how we implemented that on a very large and complex project, let's cover a few reasons for why space use visualization really matters. So on fast-track projects, it often implies that more trays are sharing the same space, or you have to increase the manpower, so it means more workers on site. And it poses safety concerns when they don't know exactly where they should be working and when the flow of trays is not very clear. Another reason is production control. With higher density of workers on site, tracking the manpower needs, but also the work that has been completed is very complicated, and even more so on the GC side. The last aspect is that we believe that space use visualization can help different trades really understand what is the work to do and negotiate the spaces that they're working on, on a given day. Of course, there are different ways of representing space use, and one of them is line of balance. But the problem with line of balance is when there is a very deep location breakdown structure, it becomes very hard to understand how scattered the work is on the site. And from a subcontractor's perspective, there isn't much information you can easily get from it, especially when there are many zones and many work areas, small rooms, for example. Of course, there are commercially available software such as Synchro. We're not trying to compete against them, but most of them really require some proficiency in using the software tool, and they require also a significant upfront time investment. Another way, and some of you may have attended the IGLC conference in 2014, where Franson and Tomline presented about their program. So their program was automating this generation of the maps that you can see in the picture, and basically it was showing for each trade where they were supposed to work on a given day. So you can see that the location breakdown structure was fairly simple, just 6 rectangles, so pretty easy to model, pretty easy to automate from the schedule. So the question was, how can we scale it up to larger and more complex projects without requiring Synchro or more complex programs to use? So we followed the plan, do, check, act cycles, and we went through many iterations. Because we were co-located with the project team, we were able to prototype even a few times in a given day, because I could just directly go on site, ask the subcontractors, and they would provide feedback. So the first step, of course, was in the planning step to define the conditions of satisfaction for the tool. And like other software, we really wanted it to be easy to use, time efficient, of course, help subcontractors visualize space use so that they could better understand how the work was scattered on site. That it didn't require any make-ready work from the team, and also that it didn't require any training to use. So, as I said, we made a few iterations, and I'll show you, not in the next slide, but the following, what these are. So, on which is the project that, what was the project that we used? So the project was, I cannot name it because of a non-disclosure agreement, Silicon Valley, but it was a 430,000 square feet office building, so pretty gigantic. And it was composed of a main parking level, then the first level, and then a green roof. Plenty of trees on the green roof. So on the first level, it really resembled a big, huge open space. And in this open space, there were plenty of clusters of rooms, 100 of clusters of rooms. And each of these clusters included between 2 to 10 different conference rooms of different sizes, finishes types, and so forth. And what the general contractor was saying is that basically on this project, every square foot was really unique, and it made production planning really tough, and even production control. So as you can see, So the general contractor was generating the schedule in Primavera, so P6. And then the Primavera schedule included the activity name, the start date, the end date, and the location. What was missing? The subcontractor's name. So in terms of the interspace, that's what we really focused on. And basically they were generating the schedule every week, and it was a 3-week look-ahead schedule, so they were updating it every week, distributing it every week to subcontractors, and then subcontractors, just for the interspace, they had to go through 60 pages of schedule because they couldn't filter it by subcontractor's name. So as you can imagine, workers started to scatter across the space because they didn't get, so activities were almost done, meaning the 95% complete that we know on projects. But nothing was really done because they're moving to the next space before being completely done with the previous one. So in terms of iterations, wasn't looking really good in the first iterations. So basically what the program was doing, you just had to export the schedule from Primavera, and for those who are using Primavera, you can just export it in an Excel spreadsheet. You copy-paste it in the workbook, in an Excel workbook, and then you enter a date, you push a button on the Excel spreadsheet, and then it populates all your 2D floor plans, and it colors up all the space used for each subcontractor. So didn't look good in the first iteration. So you can see that the project was so big, so gigantic that the space was divided in 5 main areas, but then there were like a big open space and some clusters. So you can see the pod numbers in purple. This is another iteration, and the final one was this one, just for one area. All done in Microsoft Excel, no fancy software. So you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see one area that is colored up. And some areas include some symbols, and it meant in these areas that the trade has to share the space with another trade. You could have said, but why would you do so? Why would you show this? Basically, we wanted this tool to help also the general contractor troubleshoot their schedule, and we were hoping that the general contractor, when noticing that 2 trades were sharing the same space, that they would modify the schedule accordingly. So there are many pluses and deltas to this tool. First, it was used on the project where we used traditional project management practices, and like the other project, by Franson and Tomline, where they used a last planner system and time planning. So using traditional project management methods, it's really hard to manage production and visualize space use, so it was really used. The way that we shared the 2D drawings, the colored 2D drawings, we just uploaded them on the iPad, and because it was a large and complex project, all foremen and superintendents had all their 2D drawings using PlanGrid on the iPad, so we're just adding them to these drawings. Subcontractors were happy, except the overhead subcontractors, because we're mostly representing the finishes ones, but then they came to me and said, but why aren't we on these drawings? So the general contractor was unable to really troubleshoot the schedule. Sometimes they were expecting a trade to work in a specific space, but since the schedule was so tough to update, so long, sometimes they just forgot that something didn't get completed in an area in a specific location, and that allowed them to make some adjustments. So overall, we demonstrated that the tool can be applied to projects of bigger sizes and complexity, but there are some deltas. The beauty about automation is that it really brings to the surface variations, and we noticed a lot of variations even in the way that activities were described. It was hard to automate this part of the process where we wanted the software to guess the name of the subcontractor by just reading the activity description. So we started by listing some keywords, and sometimes some keywords were used in different activities that were performed by 2 very different subcontractors. Also, you can see that most of the colored areas were the rooms, the conference rooms, because whenever it was concerning the open space area, were not precisely defined on the general contractor's side, it was hard for the software to know which area that had to color up. Then many subcontractors came to me and asked why I didn't include the activity description, why I didn't add the activity description next to each room that was colored up. This is something that we could have added, but was too late. But we're thinking about it for the next iteration. In terms of adoption, they used it, but as soon as we left the project, we realized that they didn't keep using